This presentation is on copyright and Creative Commons. In order to understand and use Creative Commons, well, we have to really understand copyright. And most of us have heard of the term copyright, so that's a good starting point. We may also have seen the symbol with the C and a circle around it and know that that represents copyright. There are some other terms, though, that many times people are unfamiliar with, and even copyright itself, people often don't understand it totally. So we're going to go through that a little bit just to lay the foundation for that, and that will lead us into some more information about Creative Commons. Public domain, what do you know about that? Public domain is actually a way to categorize items that have been created by other people that are available for public use. They are items that have often been copyrighted and their copyright has expired, or they often are items that are created by the government. Public domain items then don't need permission for you to use them. It is good, though, that you always give credit to where you got those items that you got from the public domain. And then we have to also understand that they would have an attribution and state that they are in the public domain. So don't assume that when you go out to the internet and you see a number of items, pictures or videos or whatever, that those are in the public domain. The internet is not the public domain. They have to specify as public domain, because in essence, what you see on the internet is actually copyrighted unless it says it's in the public domain or in Creative Commons. And many students and teachers alike are not, they don't realize that that is the case. But as we talk about copyright, copyright means that you must get permission from the creator prior to using their work, as well as give them attribution or give them credit for using it. So copyright is often misunderstood, and people assume that if they see things, for example, out on the internet, they can just copy and paste. But copyright law would say the exact opposite. And in fact, copyright is a law. It is a federal law. It was developed or created a number of years ago, in fact, hundreds of years ago. And things have changed since then in terms of our culture and society, which makes copyright law, especially with the use of technology and the internet, makes it hard to work with. And that's why we're going to look at some alternative sources. When we think about copyright requiring that you get permission, I want you to think of an example when you might have created a research paper, and in doing so have borrowed a quote or two from a book or an article. And I bet if you looked at the inside cover of that book that you would find the copyright symbol, meaning that you've taken, even though you've put the information in a bibliography or works cited, you've taken someone else's work or a part of it and used it for your own. And did you get permission to do that? Chances are very slim that you did. There's something else that is associated with the copyright law, but it is not actually part of the law. It's a legal defense in case you got to court and had to deal with that copyright law, and that's called fair use. And fair use says that you can use copyrighted items without having to ask for permission under certain conditions, and under certain, for certain reasons as well. And one of the reasons that you're allowed to do it is for educational purposes. So when you write a research paper for a class, you are doing that for learning or educational purposes, and that would be considered fair use. The copyright law, because it's a law, does have consequences if you are caught, and those consequences would be like most any law. You would have the chance to go to jail, you would have the opportunity to pay a fine, you could end up in court, and all of that is something we'd like for you to avoid when you are in school, and when you get out of school, either now or in the future, you need to learn about the law so that you don't get in a position to break the law. But more importantly, in my mind, you need to learn to use these items in a responsible way, in an ethical way. You need to do the right thing. So, true or false, what do you think? Basically, copyright law was created in this country to protect individuals and companies from having their work ripped off. Most people would say true, but in essence, it is false, because it goes back to the history of copyright law in the late 1700s, hundreds of years ago when it was written. The design of the law was to help spur economic growth, and was an encouragement for people to create things, to innovate things. So it was used kind of as a positive thing, not as such a negative thing as it shows here. But things have changed, as we've said. We have moved into the 21st century, and we have a whole new world. And in fact, digital technologies have truly changed how we make things, how we distribute things, how we use things. So every day we as teachers and students were using movies, pictures, music, not just the text, and all of that is done through a digital format. So it might be easy to think, hey, I can't worry about this copyright law. It's just not that important to me. And the other side of the coin is really the truth. It is that much more important to you, because if you understand the copyright law, you can learn how to work with it and look at some alternatives for using other sources to help enhance your work, or in fact to actually license your own creative work. And it's called Creative Commons. Creative Commons provides resources we can legally copy, modify, and reuse without having to ask for permission. We do need still to give attribution. That's just something you're going to want to always get in the habit of doing, but we don't have to ask for permission. And that's a long process. You can always ask a photographer or a videographer to use their work, but it may take months before you can get some feedback, and it may not be a positive feedback as well. You'll notice here that the CC is the with the circle around it is the Creative Commons symbol. You'll also see again that I use the icon for the photograph as well as the attribution, as I have on all the other slides, and we'll continue in this presentation so you can look for that. But that's not all, actually. You can also use Creative Commons in addition as a resource for your presentation. You can use it as a tool. You can use it as a tool to manage your own copyright, because indeed you make your own creations. You create things every day, and when you do that, just like anyone else that writes a poem, that takes a photograph, takes a video, that is yours. It is copyrighted automatically. So the minute you take your fingers off of that pen that wrote that poem, you have that poem that you've created, it's automatically copyrighted. You do not have to get permission from the government to copyright it or send out any paperwork to any legal office. It's automatically copyrighted. And you'll never lose that copyright, but you can add the Creative Commons license so that you can collaborate and share with others, by getting it out to a larger audience all over the world. So using it, let's go back to using it as a resource for a second. There are a number of, in fact, millions of items that are Creative Commons licensed out on the internet. The problem is that you have to look for them. You have to screen them out from the copyrighted items. You have to assume that everything you see on the internet is copyrighted unless it has a CC license, Creative Commons license, or it has an indication that it is in the public domain. So even when you look at some photographs here, they're both of the Eiffel Tower. The one on the left is copyrighted. The one on the right is Creative Commons licensed. If you went out and looked for, on a Google search, Eiffel Tower, you might very well see the image on the left and say, cool, that fits my project. I'm going to grab that one and put it on there. But if you just do one more step, you would be able to not see this one, not be tempted to use it, and go straight to another one that serves the same purpose, and it might be even more interesting and is also one you can use legally and ethically, assuming that you give credit to it. How do you do that? Well, I'm going to share in a different video how to do that in Google and also Flickr, but you can do this in Creative Commons search by going to search.creativecommons.org, and you would put your search term in here before you hit the go button. Make sure that you check off this box here because you want to make sure that the items that you're looking for do have the possibility of you making changes to them. Even if you put a filter on a picture, or you cropped it, or you only used a minute of a 5-minute video, that's considered modifying, adapting it. So you need to make sure that you have permission to do that piece. So even if you hadn't planned to do that, I always suggest that you click this box, and then it gives you that option. You don't have to go back. In this particular search mechanism, it covers a number of places that you can find Creative Commons licensed objects, and it's not just limited to photographs, but it includes video, and it includes music, and so lots of different places. And here's just some of the examples of places that have Creative Commons licensed objects. So the material that is licensed as Creative Commons you can use without having to worry about laws or exceptions. And that's really good, because if you're doing any kind of work that is non-text, in other words, you're doing a PowerPoint, you're doing some kind of a movie, or you're creating something that is non-text, which is multimedia, it will be helpful for you to build upon Creative Commons licensed objects. Always, of course, remember, though, to obey the license. Make sure that, for example, if you're going to use it for commercial purposes where you're going to try and make money, make sure that you've checked off that piece of the search and only get those things that are allowed for that. Always give proper attribution. Here is, again, another example. I gave the title of the photo. The photographer has not only the name, but also the link, and where it's available on the web. So you could click right here, go directly out to the web, find this particular photograph, and see that in fact the photographer had licensed it as Creative Commons. I've also again used the icon. The icon's not required, but it's kind of nice to show off. And by the way, you can get those as well. Always think about others' rights. In other words, it's not about you unless you put yourself in their shoes. How would you feel if someone was taking your stuff without asking for permission? Use your common sense. So licensing encourages us to think not only about others and how we're going to use others' resources, but how we want our own material to be used. And this is where I reference that you can grab your own Creative Commons license. There's various conditions that you can decide that will work for you, and then they have the licenses, and that's at creativecommons.org. So thank you for listening and watching this presentation on some very basic information with regards to copyright and Creative Commons.